So, hello, and welcome to Truth You Can Wake Up To. I'm Samuel William, and I'm speaking to you at 10:38 on the 28th of January 2013. I am, of course, broadcasting this from my soundproof booth here in the basement of Truth Towers, and it is bomb-proof, it is propaganda-proof, which is probably the most important proof out there. You can buy that from your local store, this sheeting that you surround yourself in. So, this episode, I'm not sure what it's going to be called yet. It's going to be called What's Coming Up in 2013, or Obama is Actually a Terrorist 2013. I don't know what it's going to be called. It'll be called something interesting, maybe a play on words. You guys know what it's called already, so you're actually got one up on me right now. But of course, as I edit all of this together, I will name it. Now, this episode generally is going to be about a rather recent publication by our good friends at the Brookings Institution in Washington, who, of course, are the main foreign policy think tank for the Obama administration. And they have released a document that they've called Big Bets, and Black Swans. Big Bets and Black Swans. And this is things that, recommendations for Barack Obama, things that he should achieve during this his second term, but also things that he needs to avoid in his second term as well. These black swans. Swans can get very, very angry. Now, also, though, but before I start talking about this foreign policy document, which is mildly interesting, and of course I will put a link to it at the bottom of the in the description of this video, I want to talk about a couple of things. Firstly, I want to address the events that happened in Algeria. I haven't spoken about it yet. Of course, a lot of people have spoken about it, but I want to give my 2 pence worth, just as all the Western leaders gave their 2 pence worth and gave their own interpretation as to what happened in this gas installation in North Africa. Now, Algeria is a place where violence from the government, from the military towards its people, isn't an unknown occurrence. The violence in Algeria that is pushed upon the people of that country is essentially directed, strategized, and provided by Western nations. Tear gas, for example. Tear gas, if you have a popular protest, if you have an uprising, uprisings, of course, do need a liberal sprinkling of tear gas and rubber bullets. And, of course, that tear gas, rubber bullets, and the strategy involved in deploying them does come directly from advisors coming from Western nations. Now, that's really the underlying thing that's going on here in Algeria. The interesting thing, of course, for most people, is that what was known as the Algerian hostage crisis involved, as it was mentioned in the newspapers, some Westerners working for Al-Qaeda. Westerners working for Al-Qaeda? Never. Al-Qaeda? Westerners? Surely those things don't mix together, do they? Well, of course, what we've been looking at is, of course, a little piece of propaganda, although possibly this propaganda got away from itself, because it was on Algerian television where it was noticed that some of the people who were working in the installation managed to take videos and pictures and record, essentially, some of the events with their mobile phones. And they noticed that some of the hostage takers were, in fact, Canadian. They appeared to be Canadian. Now, for anyone reading the articles and saying Canadians involved, who are these people? Is this white Al-Qaeda? Are these crazy, if they were in their own country, there'd be these lone gunmen shooting children in schools and stuff like that? No. It actually turns out that if you look back just a little bit in history, look back about 10 years, 15 years, you will notice that Canada was forced into a position where they had to insist that Israel stopped assuming Canadian identities for their secret agent, because apparently it's a favourite thing for Mossad to act and pretend to be Canadians when they are undercover. So the mention of Canadian citizens involved in a North African terrorist event was not a surprise for me, because I've read over the years how Mossad essentially pretend to be Canadians. Now, does this mean that this whole thing was an inside job? Well, I'm going to say to you, of course it bloody does. Of course it was an inside job. Now, what we really saw in Algeria was a performance piece. It was a piece of theatre with a strict agenda. Now, one of the key characteristics of any false flag operation is that it serves multiple purposes all at once. And the Algerian hostage crisis did indeed serve multiple purposes. It has been seen, just in the last couple of weeks, the vocalisms coming from people like David Cameron and various other Western leaders, the vocalisms of saying, yes, we shall stop Al-Qaeda in North Africa. This Algerian hostage terrorist incident really does show us that we need to have boots on the ground, we need to have planes in the air, we need to basically turn North Africa into a military base. This is seriously serving the New World Order agenda of total domination of the political and monetary systems in every global nation. It should also be noticed that most of the hostages did not die at the hands of the so-called terrorists. They died at the hands of the Algerian military as they were performing the operation to so-called liberate the hostages. This was in the form of missiles being sent from helicopters down onto vehicles in which some of the hostages were being transported. And, of course, big crater, big black cloud, and a lot of them are dead. And, of course, David Cameron himself said that what happened in Algeria was not the fault of the Algerian government. It was not the fault of the Algerian forces. It was the blame for this incident lies quite clearly at the door of Al-Qaeda. Well, what's going on here is that the bungled attempt of the Algerian forces to liberate the hostages, and in fact the killing of the hostages by the Algerian forces by so-called accident, does lend very clearly into the pockets of the weapons industry. And that's because if the Algerian nation and their government are seen as not properly dealing with the war on terror, then they must, through international legislation, take training from Western nations. They must, by international legislation, arm themselves with the equipment of anti-terrorism. Scanners, radar, satellite access, guns, helicopters, bulletproof jackets, you name it, they're going to be buying from the catalogue of death, the death catalogue, which is of course provided to them by MI6, the CIA, Mossad, and whatever other intelligence agency are now practicing their game in North Africa. The Algerian hostage crisis was not a crisis for people who sell weapons and for people who do military training of African nations. Now, propaganda is very, very important when you are trying to make sure that people don't realize what's really going on. a perfect example of state propaganda is, of course, this new film that's coming out, a wonderful new film that's coming out, called Zero Dark 30. Zero Dark 30. Wow, wow, wow. Zero Dark 30, of course, a film about the capturing of Osama bin Laden. And it is a dramatized version of what's called factual events. Factual events. Now, if you read the descriptions, I don't know if you call it synopsis, but if you read any of the articles that are coming about Zero Dark 30, then you are going to hear the word history a lot. They use the word history a lot. Making history. Making history. The greatest manhunt in history. History, a very important word, of course, because it is the victors who write history. It is also very important that anybody who heard, if you could not hear about it, I don't know, anybody who heard about the capturing and the killing of Osama bin Laden, they need to have their story put straight. They need to have the inside scoop about what really happened in that compound. And essentially, Zero Dark 30 is a piece of propaganda which is writing the history, is going to be a historical document of what happened. Of course, anybody with half a brain cell knows that Osama bin Laden wasn't in that compound. Anyone with half a brain cell knows that Osama bin Laden died even before September the 11th. And even if he hadn't died before September 11th, he wasn't really involved too much, other than being a bit of a scapegoat, other than being the face of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. A very interesting article that I found about as they were making this film in 2012. The article is from the New York Times, and it is dated the 6th of January 2012, and it's talking about as the makers of the film were producing it. The article is titled, "Film About the Hunt for Bin Laden Leads to a Pentagon Investigation." And it is being said that the film makers themselves were being investigated by the Pentagon because it seems that they had improper access to classified material. A brilliant article to brainwash the masses. They had improper access to classified material, leading, this is predictive programming, telling people that when this film comes out, this is going to be the inside scoop, the real knowledge, the secret knowledge about what actually happened at that compound in Pakistan. What a load of shit. And I don't often use that language during my show, but Zero Dark 30 is a shameful, shameful film. Are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it? I'm going to stay well away. I may go on Internet Movie Database and read the extended synopsis. I'm not watching that brainwash propaganda bullshit. I think I've made quite a firm stance on that film. Now, I realise I've been rambling quite a lot already, so I'm not going to go on for too long about this foreign policy document. Maybe because my throat. I've had the illness, and I'm recovering, but my throat is really sore. But you can read this thing yourself. I'm going to put the link at the bottom. Big Bets and Black Swans. Policy recommendations for President Obama's second term by the foreign policy scholars at Brookings. Hooray! Those scholars, those beautiful scholars. Of course, all of the people that work for the Brookings Institute. I would call them not scholars. I wouldn't call them that. No, I wouldn't call them scholars. I would call them arsehole. No, I wouldn't call them arseholes. I would call them gravy train robbers. Gravy train robbers. They're all people who essentially have had a high up job in, maybe in the Bush administration, or maybe they were an ambassador to a Middle Eastern country or something like that. And these people have now retired and need a cushy little job in Washington so that they can just suck in all of that free money that is taken from the American taxpayers and just belt out this guff that they call foreign policy advisement. It's quite an interesting thing to read. I mean, it's really quite extensive in terms of some of the things. The whole thinking about this thing is called this plastic moment. Plastic moment. Basically saying that the world now being in turmoil, everywhere you look, there's chaos and turmoil and suffering and poverty and economic collapse. This is a plastic moment that can be molded by the right leader into the right shape of what they're calling a liberal global order. Liberal global order. A lot has been said on the internet, of course, about this whole liberal global order thing, which is basically just saying, people are dying, man, out there. These horrible dictators are killing them. We must act. It's just the next face of the theatre production that is called militarizing and taking over the planet. Now, of course, they talk about Syria. They talk about Iran. In fact, the chapter about Iran is called it's called Turning Tehran. Turning Tehran. See, one of them is called the India Investment, bringing Beijing back. It's all like alliteration. And I've illustrated some other foreign policy documents on this on this show before, and some of them are pretty enlightening in terms of you read it and a couple of months later it's exactly how it's happened. This one is different. This one really is different in that I think it's just a kind of big lie. You should read through it. If you read through it, you'll probably see what I'm talking about. I mean, they're talking about turning Tehran, and it's about the political solution to stopping Iran having nuclear weapons, and how they need to engage with Russia more and all that kind of stuff. There's a chapter called The Road Beyond Damascus, which is about Syria. It's quite interesting, the one about Syria, because it mentions the word lethal. I'll say it. I'll quote it. It's under the bit about Syria, and it's addressed directly to Barack Obama. It's dated January the 17th, and this is a big bet. The Road Beyond Damascus. The recommendation says, and I quote, to stay... I'll do my Brookings Institution voice. Authority. To stave off disaster and play a leadership role in shaping Syria's future, this wonderful, amazing future with little birdies and leaves. The United States should provide lethal assistance to the Syrian opposition, forge a genuine national dialogue that includes Alawis and Christians, and create an international steering group, ISG, international steering group, to oversee and lend support to the transitional process, including the creation of an international stabilization force to provide protection to Syrian civilians, including the creation of an international stabilization force to provide protection to Syrian civilians. Wow. Now, the thing I want to point out about this, it says, should provide lethal assistance. I think that is in fact part of the international steering group. We're being steered to believe that actually these things are going to happen sooner than they are. What's happening? They say, not they. There's a guy called Patrick Henningsen, who you probably come across. He used to work for InfoWars, which kind of makes me not trust him too much. But apparently he quit InfoWars because I don't know, because something happened. He sort of helps the UK column. Maybe. But if you listen to Patrick Henderson, he says that the reason that there hasn't been a war with Iran, the reason that there hasn't been this severe escalation in the dealings with Iran is simply because it heightens tension in the whole surrounding area. And this tension leads to fear of war, and fear of war is alleviated by buying weapons from the death catalogue provided by the CIA and MI6 and Mossad. And that if they just constantly scare the surrounding countries and the whole world with this idea that maybe World War III will start, then this means that countries are very, very keen on getting the right kind of equipment for the right kind of job, i.e. a great big purchase with a discount card from the death catalogue. Now, I think that's exactly what this document is leading to. Big bets and black swans. It's got lots of lovely little symbols on it. It's very colourful. This is not for Barack Obama. This is for people like me to read and get the wrong idea. But I haven't. So that's good. Because it's transparent. You can also get the idea because Brookings Institute, especially these guys who in this, Michael Doran was part of the Bush administration. These guys know the game very, very well. They're not talking. There's nothing in this entire document that mentions North Africa. Nothing. And it was only published a couple of weeks ago. So it seems that they don't really know what they're talking about. And they're not seeing the picture opening up as it actually is. Black swans. It's all about Europe. It's about climate change. What can we do about climate change? Popular opinion, by the way, is that lots of people send me messages that I should do an episode about climate change, the green agenda, and all that kind of stuff. I will do that very soon. There's lots of things that I want to do that I don't really have enough time for, but I will give it a go and see what happens. The collapse of Camp David and chaos in Kabul and confrontation over Korea. This document is it's an interesting read because it just you can just smell what they're doing. Give it a read. It's quite interesting. It's very people friendly, and it's like, oh, Mr. Obama, you have such a wonderful opportunity to shape the world into this free, beautiful bullshit. I've been very angry during this episode. I don't know why, but I do. Anyway, I'm going to put this link on the bottom. Have a read through if you feel like, feeling optimistic about the way that the world's going, and you trust the Brookings Institute and you love Barack Obama. Have a read through. It's kind of an interesting thing to read. But it's a load of crap. It is a load of old bullshit that they're trying to ram down our faces. And you should read this document really so that you can understand the psychology of these people, and you can understand that they think that they're winning, and they think they can palm us off with a big fluffy cushion. And they're wrong. We don't need fluffy cushions, do we? We don't need fluffy cushions. I'm not sitting on a fluffy cushion right now. I can tell you. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this angry episode. Angry! I will try to be a little bit more reserved next time. Less swearing. Or I'll put in a beep or a censor or something like that. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Samuel Lim. This has been Truth You Can Wake Up To. And until next time, which will be sooner than you think, I will say goodbye.